Thanks for having me back here at the Smithsonian. It's such a thrill to be back and to be here on such a momentous occasion with the opening of the new Paleo Hall. And I remember my first trip to the Smithsonian in 1963 as a Cub Scout, and this is where I had my first encounter with dinosaur skeletons, and it's so cool to be back here with the opening of the new hall. And with Julius and Jay. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to tell you the story, Fish Worship, Is It Wrong, or How I Became a Scientific Surrealist. I am it's also an honor to be here with the Guild of Natural Science Illustrators. I fit into a weird category. Somebody once described my work as scientific surrealism, and I went, yeah, I guess that's what I do. And it was a description that kind of fit. So I do rate this PG-14, parental caution. There'll be some brief nudity, some sort of adult language, free use of the E word, evolution. And I rate it PG-14. I do have an artistic license, which I issued to myself too. And Raymond Ratfish Troll, license type, scientific surrealist, pasty white male, 5'10", 100 fondness for cheeseburgers, and is valid in the cosmos and beyond. So, scientific surrealism, what is it? Well, I don't know, look at this guy back here. There's a paleobotanist guy back here, Kirk Johnson. And there is a cheeseburger up there. I want to point out the cheeseburgers are rampant in my work. I always want to know where my next meal is going to come from. So if I'm hungry, I just draw a cheeseburger in there and I feel better. But I've been hanging out with scientists a lot over the last quarter century, and spending a whole lot of time with this guy here. And when he utters a phrase, and just the way my mind operates, if I hear a turn of phrase, it'll just start triggering images. And I think, well, actually, this came from a dream that you had. So this is surrealism, perfect surrealism. Since you're here, why don't you tell them the dream?
I took Larium, which is an anti-malarial drug, which makes you kind of have really bad slasher dreams. And since I'm a paleontologist, I started dreaming about everything that had saber teeth. So I said, Ray, it's a saber-tooth everything dream.
So I said, saber-tooth everything. That's a challenge, and that's a drawing. So I just drew everything, and just went through the books, everything that had saber teeth. And actually, one of my favorite descriptions, too, that Kirk will use is he often refers to walruses as saber-toothed seals, which is kind of cool. But also, I think this is a nice example of scientific surrealism. This is an oil painting that I did for the University of Alaska Southeast in Juneau. It's actually about 8 feet by about 13 feet, and it's in the lobby up there. They wanted me to do something maybe with the forest, but began also just, the science behind this is that the isotopes of salmon are in the trees itself. So actually the trees bear the nitrogen traces of the salmon. And that coevolution, that relationship between the salmon and the forest, it's like, I could paint the salmon in the stream, but why not have them swimming through the forest? And actually, there's totems. Actually, if you look back here, there's salmon that are sort of carved into the trees. But then when you actually see the original, there are salmon that are swimming up in these cedar trees, and there's just integrated in there. Plus, there's also every kind of other little pun. There's also there's some fossils back here. There's a dead guy back here. Julius, do you do that kind of thing too? You just sneak something in to entertain yourself? Jay, are you guilty of the same thing? Once in a while. Are there some hidden things in your murals that we?
Well, sometimes yes, I will put little things in.
Amuse yourself?
A beanie cap with a propeller on.
I like that. I want a clue as to which one that is, but. Anyway, so we have the 5 species. Actually, there's a couple of sockeyes in there swimming into the forest. So that's, a surreal scene with, kind of real science behind it. This is a painting, an acrylic painting inspired by my travels with Kirk. But also, this kind of looks like Chase DeForest here, but I don't know, sort of Michelle. But anyway, she's annoyed with these ammonites. She's really sort of pissed off looking there. But this is the dream of the double ditty. double Didymosauros, Gorgo on TV over there, not Godzilla. There's a mysterious dog poking, it's looking in the window there. This is a Taeniodont, a weird Eocene, it's Eocene age, right? With very bizarre teeth, kind of compared with my daughter's teeth at the time too. As she was getting her, she had her braces on at the time, and she had these wonderful molds of her teeth. And this is just to make Kirk happy. There are lots and lots of leaves in this. But I had a lot of fun painting this. And, well, or this is a case of where a ray troll is catching his Aphactinus on a dry fly. And Cretaceous fish. And this one is kind of straight ahead, just painting the Entelodont Archaeotherium, which also gave rise to a song by my band, you know, Hell Pig. Actually, one of our favorite songs to play, Hell Pig. So, little samples of where the mind goes. Here's Jack Horner really hoping the T-Rexes are scavengers. He's reaching for his hammer there. Here's my friend Terry Piles laying very still, hoping the Eurypterid won't notice him as it glides above him. So that's where these are where my brain go as I paint these things and draw these things. This is a pen and ink drawing from the latest book with Kirk, and this is actually, Kirk, since you're here, we could do a tandem thing. You know, remember when we jammed on? You want to introduce this one?
All right, so there is a place in Southern California called the Salton Sea, which is just a dry valley, but they have found a fossil walrus there. And there's a town called Cabazon, which is featured briefly in Pee-wee's
Pee-wee's Big Adventure, yes.
Where there are these two gigantic concrete dinosaurs that were built by a guy who used to work for Knoxbury Farm and retired at 65. And his wife said, get out of the house, as they went and made two gigantic concrete dinosaurs. And they're still there. But they're owned by creationists now.
It's a bizarre thing. Yeah, that's right.
This fossil walrus is a giant creationist concrete dinosaur in Cabazon.
Yeah, and there actually is a sign there that says, world's biggest dinosaur, is evolution true? Yes. Or drawing like this, ammonites. The word ammonite comes from the Egyptian god Ammon, the ram-headed god. That's spiral. So just, you know, combining the two. So here are ammonites floating in the temple of Ammon. So it was great fun to draw. And this is pen and ink. I penciled it out first, then ink it, since you guys are illustrators, and then digital color with Photoshop. So I'm still half analog, half digital. And sometimes I job out the coloring too, oftentimes. Like this one. I did a pen and ink here, and then I handed it off to my friend and assistant, Grace Freeman, who does a wonderful job colorizing my stuff, and then she'll hand it back to me and I'll tweak it. But so this is a big Photoshop file. But this is every wrong version of Helicoprion ever done. So I fell in love with this beast, became fascinated with this beast, and then it was really exciting to kind of help participate in the science that helped solve the mystery behind where in the hell did this whirl of teeth go on the beast, on the shark. It's a Paleozoic chondrichthyon, and hanging out with my ichthyologist friends. And like I said, it was really my passion and curiosity when I first saw a fossil of this that I just began to bother people until the scientists were like, okay, we'll work on this. And I helped gather a team that really proved once and for all that the whirl of teeth is in the lower jaw. This is in 1993, but we confirmed that in 2013 with another version, the very final version. Anyways, there's so many versions up here, it's kind of maddening. But let's tell you the whole story. This is taken circa 1964. I'm the 10-year-old punk right here. That guy. Got this attitude. That's actually taken shortly after I came to the Smithsonian for the first time. So these are the troll kids. There's 6 troll kids. Ancestry.com has revealed that there are actually 7 troll kids. We have a brother in Florida that we did not know about until recently. This is very interesting. He's 71 years old and he just met the rest of us. He's our full brother. So mom and dad had another kid before they got married. But that's another story. But of the 6 kids here, the top 4 ended up in Alaska. So there was just something about Alaska, and here we are headed to, our dad was in the Air Force. This is 1957, and we're headed to Japan. I'm sort of the weird looking kid right there, you know, with and then this is another picture taken here. It's my kids. These are the 4 kids that all moved to Alaska. My sister Mary's got a pistol down there, and we're all wearing my dad's uniforms, and my sister Kate is looking at Tim's enormous ears. And Tim is also an artist, but Kate lives in Juneau. Mimi was in Anchorage. But really the fish thing for me really started taking off when our dad was transferred to Puerto Rico in 1964. From 64 to 67, we lived right across the street from the ocean. And this was the beach that I went down to all the time. And that's where my fish fascination really took hold, right there. And being able to snorkel and be around those fish. And then the 70s, the 60s and 70s happened. That's me. Just saying. So they were very good to me, very inspiring. This is the communal house that I lived in Wichita, Kansas. So yes, I was the Kansas hippie. College was also good to me too. So that's my undergrad picture. I'm the shy guy with the camel teeth there and the white suit in the center. And then I went out to Washington State after that and eventually ended up going to Washington State University to get my Master of Fine Arts degree, and immediately formed a band with my graduate professors, Jim and Joe Hockenhall, and we were a really big deal in Spokane. And then fast forward to 1983, I moved to Ketchikan, Alaska. I've got my MFA right there. And I am now a proprietor of fish. I'm a fishmonger. So I was the artist looking for something to do. I landed in the great Northwest, and Julius, you know how inspiring that landscape is, and that culture that I had landed in the middle of. And I came up as a fishmonger, and I've been there ever since. And I was lucky enough to meet my wife, Michelle, back there. Hello, Michelle. Yeah, she's a picture. So this is a view from our front, from out of our house, our front yard, where Michelle and I live. 13,000 people. We get 1 million people through on cruise ships every year nowadays, and they've become kind of our lifeline. We do, on an average year, get 156 inches of rain a year, which keeps you in the studio quite a bit. This year we're having a super drought, though. But with only 80 inches. You're having one here too?
No.
No.
We have a record
Rainfall.
365 days as of a week ago.
Of what?
Rain.
Of rain?
Rain.
Really? So you're getting our rain. Ah, okay. Well, yeah, the planet is... Well, when I moved there in '83, I began to look at the fish. I had the art degree, and I was in the middle of this big fish culture. And that's what really began to inspire me. And I also worked in the slime line a little bit. I worked in the canneries. That's what they called it. And I actually got a studio right at the slime line. And that's one of the things that kept me there. I had a great studio right on the waterfront in one of the old canneries. And also was cleaning fish, catching fish. Started going out and catching fish, and I had never caught fish like this. This is one day's fishing trip out of Ketchikan. There's Rachel, the younger guy, with his fillet knife, and I learned to fillet all those fish and began to have all these experiences with the fish, and just started really being inspired by the fish, and of course, really, just being totally fascinated by these and going deeper and deeper into the science. I wanted to know more about them. This is a yellow eye rockfish, Sebastes ruborimus. It means magnificent, very red. And it's like, yeah, I've had mornings like that where I wake up and no, I'm sorry. But this was the really old fish, and the genus and species of it, the genus Sebastes, there are all these varieties of rockfish up there. But I was inspired. I was, and I had these experiences catching these fish, and here I'm looking pretty good, squinting into the sun like Hemingway or something, like, I've caught this fish. I'm very proud of it. But also, I was raised Catholic, and I'm very proud of it here, but I was also suffering from the idea of killing these fish. So being a sensitive soul, really I felt terrible, I was conflicted. But there, within the conflict, was food for art. then that's where good art comes from, I think, that tension. I was really proud, fiercely proud, and also, we're going to eat this, but then also look at this beautiful animal, and what have I done to it? But I began to do T-shirts on these subjects. Soon became a fish head. This is a pastel drawing, and that last one was pen and ink and watercolor. This is an almost inappropriate picture of me. The very first time I caught a king salmon, and it was a life-changing experience. It was a 41-pound king. I ain't bragging, but yeah, I'm bragging. I'm bragging. But it was really a life-changing experience, catching something like that and experiencing the joy of catching it, but also experiencing, the death of it. But also there's the goofy ideas that came out of it. Ain't no nookie like Chinookie. So pen and ink and watercolor. And then also at the same time, a drawing like this came out of it, The Dream of the Fisherman, a charcoal drawing. This is basically charcoal dust rubbed onto paper and then drawn mostly with eraser. So kneaded eraser and hard erasers, old school, analog, dirty, big mess. But there's nothing like that really other than making that big, big mess in the studio. Did this painting, a Midnight Run. This is oil on canvas, and this is 4 feet by about 8 feet. It's one of my first public commissions up there in Ketchikan, and there I am without a beard, kind of weird, but that's the size of the canvas. And this is a drawing that I did in my studio. That's how big that drawing is, but this is that sculpin headdress upstairs in the ocean hall. And this is the one that you're taking back to. Do you want to share that story at all?
So this is a Tlingit mask that we have in our collections here. It's on display. It's an object of cultural patrimony, the Tlingit people. And we've done but it's very delicate, and the tribe is actually interested in us maintaining it here rather than giving it back to them. But we've taken a 3D scan of it, made a 3D print. In September, we're taking the original and the scan to Juneau, and they're going to basically move the spirit of the headdress from the original into the 3D scan and keep that in Juneau at the Clan of the Elders and dance the new hat, and we're going to bring the original back to the collection here. So it's an interesting combination of cultural practice and 3D scanning and output.
Yeah, it's
Future? September 25.
September, yeah. So that's a Tlingit mask representing a sculpin. And it's a beautiful, beautiful piece, and it's, up in the ocean hall. And so there's Mr. Troll working on that piece. But this is a pivotal point in my weird career where I had my printmaking degree from Bethany College in Kansas, and I knew how to pull a squeegee, and I'd worked in a T-shirt shop, so I started printing my own T-shirts, and these say, "Let's spawn." And my hippie little, I had this is upstairs in the studio, and I painted this mural in exchange for my studio space in the cannery. And I sold a couple hundred of those T-shirts in just one weekend, and I went, oh my God, I'm onto something. I could make money doing this. I could quit my day job. And eventually that's what I did, because it took off, and here's my beautiful bride, Michelle. She sat through a few, wake up, honey. So there's Michelle, and we started, Michelle and I went all throughout Southeast Alaska. We printed up a little catalog and went to the different stores in Southeast Alaska, got our friends to pose for these groovy pictures and fashion photos, fishy fashions, and we started these fishy fashions. And then a little bit of hold in 1987, we had our first kid, so spawning was on my mind, or our minds, but also, really when you talk about the fish culture that's in the Northwest, there are all these aspects to it, the commercials, fishing, the sports fishing, there's the whole culture built around it, the biologists that study the animals. But really what drives that fish culture mostly are salmon, Pacific salmon. And the transformation, the magical life stories that salmon go through, born as orphans, going out in the ocean, going out into the world, coming back years later. And then once they get into the fresh water, they go through this really just incredible transformation within a matter of weeks. as they go from salt water to fresh water, and the flesh is dropping off of them, and they get big humps and big teeth on them. And so I did this T-shirt here, Spawn Till You Die. And this one seemed to hit the zeitgeist just right, and it's still going. It's probably one of my best-selling T-shirts of all time. So I'd like to share with you a few of the spots where it's shown up. Here, this is a film with Steve Zahn on the left there. This is Isaac Hayes on the right. And the crazy guy we know is wearing the Spawn Till You Die T-shirt from Central Casting right there. Crazy guy, Spawn Till You Die. Motley Crue right here. Nick Mars. This is Charlie Musselwhite. Got some bragging rights there. Charlie's really cool. He's a harmonica player, really, and that's Ben Harper on the left there. But Charlie's been, I've actually gotten to correspond a little bit with Charlie over the years. Cool guy. This is my friend Tommy Joseph when he was invited to the Bush White House for the Christmas tree lighting. Laura Bush is on the other side of the tree, and there's Tommy representing. I like that. In the movie Superbad right there, check it out in the bad guys room, Spawn Till You Die. Ugandan action film. That is product placement. Product placement. So you got an action film, The Return of Uncle Ben, and fast forward, you can see this guy. I mean, that guy has got he's got a grenade launcher, and then he loses it. But then it's like, you can see the T-shirt. It's great. So I thought it doesn't get any better than it being in a Ugandan action film, but then I got this email with Harry Potter on Broadway. So he's rocking a Spawn Till You Die T-shirt on Broadway. And it says in True Detective, the HBO series, bad girl down by the river. She's bad. So here's some of the T-shirts. Dead Man's Reach, Served in Bed, Raises the Dead. Pen and ink, digital color. I don't have to buy coffee anymore in my life. I did a whole series of labels for my friends at Ravensbrew Coffee. And
Well, you have to be in Juneau.
no, I have to be up in Alaska for them to deliver it to. Here's Yao Ming. He's not wearing it, but look, right behind him. Eye to eye. I'll get it where I can. Don't worry, be humpy. People done quilts with my stuff, my T-shirts over there. Here's a bunch of scientists at the South Pole, I think, McMurdo Station there. And that's actually, I drew on a tablecloth at a restaurant in Monterey, and somehow it ended up at the South Pole. Kirk, you and I have been at some of those episodes, I think. Bass Backwards. Hell's Anglers. It turns out the Hell's Angels did not appreciate that. I found out about it. They went into some stores in Northern California and threatened the owners with bodily harm, so I quickly changed it to Fish Hard, Die Free. Rebel Without a Cod. Turns out James Dean had more lawyers than me, and they said cease and desist. I said, okay. I changed it, but he's still there. So, one fish, two fish, dead fish, blue fish. There's no free lunch. Pen and ink, watercolor. Yeah, when I'm feeling down. I'm sorry.
But not very sorry.
I'm not that sorry, but yeah. So these are like little notebook drawings, and just like, if I laugh, I think it's good. And then when I'm feeling down, this one's like really fishing for compliments. Yeah, my favorite one is I love your shoes. Good job. True virtuoso. Way to go, man. Yes. I thought I would sell a lot of these T-shirts. Wild Puffins Rip My Flesh is my homage to Frank Zappa's Wild Weasels Rip My Flesh, and we still have some if you want them. This, not so popular either. Sorry. Thank you. That's color pencil on black paper, by the way. Tortured Soul. Dick Cheney up there. CIA manual. Life is good. Death is not bad. Hospice like this one. It's true. They did. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. Fish peddler there. Alaska, the last great adventure. When I did the T-shirt of this, we called it Snack Time. Speaking of which, the family that prays together stays together. Bear attack at art opening. She's so bored. Just another bear attack. Kodiak moment. Actually, another 5 years, no one will know what that's about at all. You know, I mean, that's kind of the truth of it. So bears, yeah, I mean, fish, I'm a fishy guy, I'm a paleo guy. My first love in life was dinosaurs, then fish, and I'm afraid of bears. I've done a lot of work about bears. And once upon a time, I was at Katmai National Park, and they knew Ray Troll was there, so they asked me to do a talk about bears, and I realized I don't have that much bear art, but I had this other idea. I decided I would walk around Brooks Camp that day. This is a great bear viewing place in Alaska where people come from all over the world to look at bears. And I thought I'd ask 100 people. This is my scientific survey, my scientific survey, but I asked 100 people because I knew about the evolution of bears, and all that, but I thought this is something I could talk about that maybe they don't know about. But I just decided to ask 100 people, what are bears related to? What's their closest relative? And you guys are all biologists and or natural history illustrators, but you know the answer is seals and sea lions, but only 3% of respondents said that. 3%. And I'd actually bet it's even lower than that. Kirk, you've been asking people too this one?
I actually asked people who are interviewing for the mammologist job here.
Oh, that's what their test now?
And I got a couple false positives there. So.
I hear pigs a lot more than 7%, I think, when I ask people. But that made me think, wow, we need to teach evolution much differently, or we need to start teaching it at a very young age, I think. Kids can get the relationships. They really can. It's very easy, and I think, why is it important? If you run into a bear on the trail and you think it's actually a type of monkey, and you don't know that it actually is sort of close to dogs, or that there used to be an animal called bear dogs. There are all kinds of varieties of those. But yeah, pinnipeds fall out closest. So basically they are sea bears. They're bear mermaids. They're not sea lions, they're sea bears. Bear mermaids. So they share a common ancestor. And then when you go back down the tree, but I love doing these evolutionary trees, and in our latest book with Kirk, I did a bunch. So back to some of this, and then there's this. This is a disparate lecture tonight. Da Vinci Cod. Mona was a cannery girl. So this is the way my brain works, sublime and the ridiculous. If you must smoke, please smoke salmon. And he's sitting at the cafe drinking espresso, writing really bad poetry. If you must smoke, yeah, he's just sitting there. Northern exposure. Jay, you like that one? Downward facing dog. Blues in the Key of Sea. Pulp fishing. Southeast Alaska is closing to get to actually living underwater. Dungeons and Dragons. Floyd. Pink Floyd. Kawasaki. Sorry, Return to the Sakai. So this is Sakai-delic, and I really like doing these sort of mandala type of things. And actually, this is a piece of art that I did for the Ocean Hall. And it's upstairs, and it shows the relationship of salmon to all the various species that depend upon them at different points in their life. So it was actually long before Kirk was here that I worked on that one. This is a piece I did for NOAA, Sustainable Fisheries. This is a gigantic mural project I worked on with my friends Memo Haragi and Roberto Salas, and this is a NOAA lab at Pacific Grove just south of the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And blue seas, green seas. So I've done a number of large scale, full scale works. That one was for a big aluminum piece on a hatchery in Alaska. This is a hand-painted bust that my buddy and Memo and I'm looking so gangster there, aren't I? Or not, really. Memo looks cool, but this is a hand-painted bust we have in Ketchikan, Alaska, the salmon bust, and it's got a 900-pound flaming halibut on top. It's fun to do that. My favorite thing, though, is that when you hit the brake lights, the halibut light does that. You behind it? So that. Why aren't there more hand-painted cars out there, you know? There should be. Sharkabet, shark alphabet book that I did, and a lot of Paleozoic sharks, living and extinct sharks, but this is actually my best-selling book. Sharks from A to Z. Dive bar, a lot of research in that one. FISHHEAD, with apologies to Giuseppe Arcimboldo. Got ink. This is the cephalopod portion here. Octopi Wall Street. Squid Pro Quo. Oh, and actually, Chris Ma, there you are. We're going to be checking out Squid on Friday morning, right? We got the date. My wife Michelle suggested maybe 1:30 on Friday. Just while I'm remembering that. But we're going to meet at the giant squid, right?
Yes, sir.
Anyways, we'll talk about that in a second. But anyways, I look forward to looking through the collection with you. But spontaneous combustion, salmonscape. This is a large mural I did for the University of Washington. This is acrylic on canvas. Took about almost a year to paint it, 7 by 15 feet. City of Seattle is back there. There's some romantic tension in here too, I think. Because there's the female ratfish over here looking back toward the male ratfish down here. So there's that kind of thing going on there. Here's the 5 and actually 6 salmon species with the steelhead coming into Puget Sound, being led by the king of the salmon. And I love doing these things where I just start painting and just filling it up, and sometimes the scale gets dramatically weird because I just get interested in something, and so a fish that maybe is an inch long becomes 2 feet wide because I was really interested in it. So there's a lump sucker that's gigantic, and they're really only that big, and then there's one looking right at you there. So it's fun to compose those things as you go along. I am in a band, the Ratfish Wranglers. Our dream is to play at the Smithsonian someday. We hope to. But bringing it back around to this guy sitting right over here, I've known Kirk for, we met in 1993, right? So it's actually 26 years, right? Right? Yeah. So our first book, Cruisin the Fossil Freeway, was the Rocky Mountain States, and this is the latest book, Cruisin the Fossil Coastline. And this is about a 10-year project from start to finish, and right in the middle of it, he got a new job running this place. So it kind of slowed down the production on it a little bit, but our heroes are in the forecastle here, but these are many of the creatures that are featured in the book. That's acrylic on board there, and there's a younger picture of troll. Mysteriously, Kirk never ages. He claims it's the fossils, but that's like a 20-year-old photo right there. And look, I'm kind of a younger guy, but look, I'm an old guy now. But look, there we are at your wedding. How many years ago is this? No? How many years? 2004? Yeah. So we just stepped off the dance floor, joined at the head there. So here is our portraits that are in the book, and Kirk, it's a 7-word biography, right? 6? Count them though.
There's an extra word in there.
Is there threw an extra word in? 7 words. Coastal creationist kid finds rocks in evolution. That's his life story. He can expound upon that if he wants at a later date. But my story, and he wrote this, Kansas hippie paints fish in the rain. So the scientist, the artist, Kirk is sort of the science major, well, he's the science guy that I always wanted to be, and actually, your mom, an artist. Your minor in undergrad was art. So it's a nice meeting of the worlds. Kirk's totemic living animal is a walrus, and his fossil, leaves are his thing, but ammonites are his problem, his obsession in life. Mine are trilobites and ratfish. So those are our kind of totemic animals. I've done a bunch of these fossil maps for our latest book. So we did every state and province on the West Coast, and these all represent actual fossil localities. And I'll be signing copies of that book at 2 o'clock and they've got them in the bookshop here. But here, just to kind of end with kind of a weird story of how science and art and all this converge. These are the vertebrae of a saber-toothed salmon, Oncorhynchus rastrosus. When I say that, people think I'm making it up. Gigantic prehistoric salmon, but it's true. These are, I think this photo was taken in San Diego, the San Diego Museum of Natural History.
Maybe LA.
LA County. They got great examples of them. And these growth rings, look, there's like 1, 2, 3 really major growth rings in them. Sister species of the sockeye salmon, Miocene, mostly, I guess they appear in the Miocene and disappear by the end of the Pliocene. That's one of the fangs on these creatures. And massive, big salmon. They are in the genus Oncorhynchus. So I get a little carried away when, you know, I think the estimates in the size range, you know, up to 8 feet. But I don't know, I look at those vertebrae and I think of them as big, 13-footers or something. But basically they have they have a lot of gill rakers. They obviously were probably plankton feeders. And this is a sculpture that Gary Staub did, and Kirk introduced me to Gary Staub many years ago, and Gary just sculpted the massive megalodon that you guys have here now. Gary did the sculpture, Memo and I did this painting at the University of Oregon of saber-tooth salmon. And then lo and behold, a couple years ago, actually I should say 10 years ago, they found some new specimens that show that the sabers don't point downward at all. They found a whole school of them preserved in eastern Oregon, and their fangs point sideways. So there's like, well, we can't keep calling it the saber tooth when it's this weird, like now this, but it's still Oncorhynchus. So what's that all about? The sideways sabers, you know, probably territorial, you know, fighting, but also for maybe digging the gravel beds. But these are massive, big plankton-feeding fish. But also this, you know, like, what do we call it? So I just started calling it the spike-tooth salmon, big tooth, boar tooth, scythe tooth. Spike tooth seems to stick. But that's just one of the things where science keeps on changing. This is, and you got to catch up with it and roll with it. And this is, there's an exhibit based on the book, the latest book with Kirk, that's at the Alaskan State Museum in Juneau. It features more Gary Staub sculptures. There's a Pachyrhinosaurus coming through the wall. Everything looks cooler punching through a wall. And it's the world's only spot where you have a trilobite couch. So here's that sort of yin-yang thing with Troll Johnson here. But this is, I'm really loving doing these patterns. So we work with spoonflower.com. I don't know if you guys know about Spoonflower, but you can upload your patterns there and you can have them output onto fabric, heavy fabric. And so this is the world's only trilobite couch. But check out this lovely wallpaper to make Kirk happy. So ammonite wallpaper. And there's Troll collapsed on the trilobite couch. And with that, here's, Jim, I wanted you to check out the whale family tree. Have you checked this out? So this is one of the family trees to closest living creature to them, mammal group on land, hippopotamus. But I worked with Bobby Bosenecker to do this family tree. And but also at the very end of the book, I did this piece, and I worked with a bunch of Stanford biologists. This is Chuck Baxter, who was emeritus there now, but he turned 90 years old a couple years back. And I was commissioned by some friends of his, some other Stanford biologists. And we worked through the great family, the great tree of life. And as that Kansas hippie who paints fish in the rain, this really appeals to me when you stop and realize that, you know, when Mr. Darwin figured it out all those years ago, that wait, we're related to everything in the world, everything. At some level, we are related to everything. And life has happened only once on this planet. And as I worked in this, so as I follow my curiosity and I work in these projects, I learn a lot as I go along. It's been a great privilege to have this guy by my side for 25 years. And, you know, one of the, I think, the world's top scientists, you know, and we've driven practically around the world now, I'm sure. Been to the Amazon a few times, had many an adventure. But learning from, you know, scientists and being inspired by it, truly inspired by doing it in my own weird, goofy way. But I also, you know, learn these strange things that where my hippie brain goes. Come along for the ride for a second. So vertebrates spread off the closest group to vertebrates, right? And I fear to do this in a room full of scientists, echinoderms. So we are the wayward spawn of tunicates. And really at some point too, we are all descended from fish. We are variations on fish. These are kind of mind-blowing concepts to me. And to really think, that we are variations on fish. And I'm standing here on my pelvic fins, gesturing with my pectoral fins. And I'm a modified lobe-fin fish. And then I started asking, these questions too, what are the closest group to primates? Jay?
What is that?
The closest mammal group to primates. You're one of the world's experts.
I guess the edentates would be,
The edentates?
well, let's see. Well, the Colugo, you did show a picture of the Colugo. I can't think of the name right now, but there are a number of groups which are really either they're insectivores or they are primates. It's anybody's guess. It's an individual interpretation.
It's fascinating, I try to.
Two piads, yes.
Well, I think one of the latest papers that I saw showed that colugos, genetically when they did the genome on colugos, that they fall out right next to the primates. So these are, and I just look at a colugo and go, whoa, that is just so cool. And then you look at these pictures of colugos flying through the trees, and then you see people wearing these kind of bat wing suits, and you go, oh my gosh, colugos are our kin. That's like little people flying out of the, anyways. That's what I find so mind-blowing science is such an inspiration. And with that, really, I'm left stumbling for words. But thank you for listening to my musings. And with that, thank you.
We have time for a few questions.
There, I did it. Whew.
This is the first time I've ever seen a depiction of the fish with the saber tooths, and it looked like they have pockets or scabbards or something to close their mouth and have the big teeth go down below their chins.
The saber-tooth salmon, or the spike-tooth salmon is what I'm calling it now.
Various fish you had that have big tusks, or whatever you call them, but it looked like, when they close their mouth, in other words, the tooth isn't outside of them, it goes into those pockets?
There's some beautiful 3D prints of those saber teeth now. And this is actually for the scientific paper that's coming out, but this actually, that fits right up in that slot. And these teeth are absolutely horizontal.
Well, I was thinking of the ones with the vertical long teeth, and it looked like under their chins there were these drooping things, and I presume that's where
we should.
Their mouth, the teeth go down in there, I guess.
There was some of the other salmon you showed after they were.
Yeah, in the early part of the talk.
Oh, the very first, the
Yeah.
payara maybe, those with the teeth. Pardon me? The freshwater fish, yeah, the payara is with the big teeth that go right up through the lower jaw. But we can look through stuff but yeah, base it on as close. I like to. So with the surrealism, I try to get the animals as accurate as I can with my abilities. So I try to base it on the real thing, because it's just they're such phenomenal creatures. But I want you to believe the creatures, but then I like to have fun with them. So
I'm just curious, what are your, you seem to really like big things that move. I mean, there aren't 500 pictures of lycopod trees or anything like that. So, I mean, is that kind of your aesthetic? You kind of like the monster type thing? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm sort of a 5-year-old kid that likes monsters. I mean, truth be known. I mean, yeah. Kirk's always trying to point out the wonders of the botanical world. And yeah, trees are exciting, but, but then a big thing that scares you in the night. Yeah, these are my obsessions, big sharks, and I'm pretty basic, sharks and toothy things. But weird stuff, I'm really drawn to the weird and underappreciated. That's why when Helicoprion, I couldn't look away once I couldn't unsee it.
Your pen and ink, do you use scratch board for animals?
Actually, the fish worship, that's a scratch board. I love scratch board for that real graphic look, and I do some linoleum block prints too. I just like I just love the physicality of it. I do some digital, but I can't be in front of a monitor without just for too long. But you were just showing me you're working on the iPad, and I have a Wacom tablet. I'm sure you're not using a Wacom tablet.
No, I have
Yeah.
them, but the iPad is just,
Yeah, the iPad. What are you working on?
I'm taking notes from your lecture.
Oh, well, you are. But what do you work on? Yeah.
It's a Cintiq, so like.
So it's basically, but it's directly, it's not on a Wacom. All right. We'll just do a couple more and then we'll get some oxygen. Yes.
So myself and these two are aspiring scientific illustrators, and my question is, what wisdom would you have for those of us just trying to start out?
Well, I have followed my muse, so I think and I follow my fascination, but I think what's most important too, and the way that I've done it really is genuine person contact. And so if you're fascinated with ratfish, you find the people in the world ratfish. If you want to know about whales, but you establish a relationship with a scientist, and they're usually thrilled to have somebody interested in their particular stuff. But you know, it's got to be. I've always worked organically like that, and it's never been like a job. But yeah, it's through these relationships. So I mean, and then really that's just your passion, you know, for your subject matter. And if you share a genuine passion with if you're really into birds, you know, there's ornithology, it's these partnerships. And really the back and forth with Kirk over the years, I managed to find ways to actually, follow my bliss and, do products and that kind of thing. But you get paid every now and then, and I assume you got paid okay over the years, So, but you should ask these guys. This guy right here, but. Oh, you're being summoned out of the room. You guys got to sneak off. So thank you, Jay.
Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I'm one of your great fans.
Well, no, I mean, are you going to be around for some of the functions over the next couple of days, too?
Yes,
So we'll see you tomorrow night or something?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I want to get pictures with
We'll be
you.
here tomorrow night.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Always been your
All right,
fan.
thanks. All right, well, yeah, well, I'll just hang out a little bit.
I was wondering, how did you meet with Kirk?
Kirk found me at one of my exhibits. I had an exhibit at the Burke Museum of Natural History, and I guess following up on the how do you make a living doing what you do, like these personal relationships, but also having ambition and not being apologetic about being ambitious. I had these dreams. I wanted to do these exhibits. The exhibits weren't going to come to me. And I collaborated with do these books, but usually they were growing out of book projects. But it takes some guts to propose an exhibit to a museum, and then the many-headed monster of a museum, because it's not just, as you guys know, this is like one of the ultimate labyrinths of relations. You've got to have all the museum heads, the different departments, buy into the idea that it's going to be a popular, well-received exhibit based on real science, and or just being a stimulating exhibit. But to have the courage to follow through, have the vision that you want to do this room of your art, working maybe with a scientist, or your own, maybe you're doing science too, but he met me at the Burke Museum, and I just remember I was scared out of my mind to call them up. A friend of mine said, I had this book, Planet Ocean, which, Richard, you have a copy of. I'd done with my friend Brad Mattson, and it had all this artwork from this book. And I was trained as an artist. And this is a hardback copy of it. And these are all these pastel drawings, and I had I had probably 50 pieces of framed artwork. But I didn't know if I was going to go to a gallery to show them or what. But then a friend of mine I sat down with who knew museums said, you know, you don't go to an art museum. Go to a natural history museum and propose it to them. Have your artwork with the fossils, but also approach it as an artist. So it was sort of this really netherworld between art and science, but it worked. But Kirk came to a reception that we had at the Burke Museum, and he said he knew of my fishy T-shirts, and he was surprised to see that I was a paleo nerd. And he said, "Man, I'm gonna have your stuff out at the Denver Museum," and he made that happen. So we became friends and did a couple books. So.
You have such a unique visual voice. Anybody can recognize your art anywhere. I've been seeing your art for a very long time, but didn't know it was you until relatively recently, right? So how long did it take?
You're like, oh, it's that guy again.
Yeah. How long did it take you to develop your visual style, your aesthetic? How long before you picked it and said, yes, this is me?
Well, I'm 65 now, but my influences are on my sleeve, literally. I know there's a ratfish over here, but tattooed on my arm. But I went to undergrad school, but I also went to grad school. So I got a Master of Fine Arts. So that was 2 years just to do my own work, but I was very much influenced by my professors. This was in Eastern Washington, but it was that 2 years of really kind of 2 years there's nobody directing you on what to you went into the room and you just did art for 2 years. But I was teaching drawing and painting at the same time photography, but you just go in and create, and you're kind of forced to come up with your own style. But people look at my stuff and say art crumb. People look at my stuff and they usually say art crumb, but I think there's medieval influences. There's, I don't know, you could pick it apart, but there's influence by Jay Maternus, because I just love his murals with everything in them. But you develop it. You want to get I think, for a while, as an undergrad student or when you're younger, you should be a sponge, try on different styles. You're going to be influenced by other people. But you're really, after a while, you want to get your own voice, and your own distinctive style. It's kind of, it will evolve. And if you're really cloning someone else's work, people will kind of let you know. It's like kind of not cool after a point, like get your own thing going. So.
How about William Stout?
Yes, well, William Stout's an influence too, and he's a friend of mine. I met Bill over the years, cool guy. But yeah, he's sort of drinking from the same water in a way. So.
Have you ever thought about finishing the fossil map of the other states?
I have. The East Coast is dying to be done. Pardon me?
It'd be very interesting to see it from a paleo perspective, not just the art perspective.
I think about it in terms of also like the East Coast is just waiting to be done, like Kirk and I should, but he's got this job with you guys now. And I'm getting older, but yeah, I'd like to do the East Coast and just complete the U.S. at least. But then there's the globe. But Julius can do it. I hand it off to you guys. Ball's in your court.
Had you ever heard of the artist Roger Demuth?
No, I don't know that.
He's in upstate New York, Syracuse illustration professor, but there's definitely some stylistic similarities, but he's not a scientific illustrator, he's more editorial.
Oh, yeah?
But he comes from around similar, give or take 10 years, and he's kind of, his stuff, you keep referring back to the hippie thing, he's got a lot of psychedelic in the pen and ink, which I always admired, being able to draw on pen. You can fill up a whole notebook without using a pencil or an eraser. And I don't know if you probably can do the same thing, but for me,
I fill up notebooks.
amazing that you could do that without having, in ink the first time and get it.
Well, people do look at my stuff sometimes too, and when I say, yeah, it's the hippie, and they look at my work and they think it's really heavily drug influenced, you know, when I do these psychedelic things. And on the one hand, I'm like, God, no.
It's the calligraphy.
Maybe the calligraphy, the sort of hippie thing. But you know, and it's really kind of like, are you so, you know, not creative enough that you think that it has to come from drugs, you know? But I think some people just are very hyper creative, and it's almost like they can't turn it off. But yet I look back and I can honestly say that, yeah, psychedelic experience, I had some, I did drugs, you know, I'm not advocating them, but I think they change worldviews in a way, you know, I mean, there's experiences that you have. I don't do hallucinogenics, but anymore, long as it's been forever, but yeah, there's kind of a confession. It'll warp your sensibilities, so. But I think, you know, but if I just kept going with it, I think it would have destroyed me. But I think there's some influence there. The psychedelic look is there.
Well, I didn't really mean.
No, I'm just rambling here. I'm telling you I'm giving you too much information. I'm probably digging my own hole here, but yeah.
So you have any Coligo pieces in the works now with the new idea?
There's just, I don't know. The Colugo thing is, I just think, pretty fascinating. It's just an intuitive thing, you know. But bats classically, I think, have been thought of the closest to humans, and you look at bats a little differently. But the idea that really, you know, we're descended from tree-dwelling apes, you know, but maybe they were really gliding at some point, and this ability to reach behind us is sort of this flying thing, or I don't know. But yeah, if nothing else, it'll be a cool song, Colugo. Just sounds cool. Colugo. I'm kind of working on a song about it. So, but that's also, you know, with the band, I have these ideas, and then I go to the band, and we come up with these crazy songs, and it's fun to do. So, how much longer? We want to ramble? A couple more questions, and then we'll.
As an ichthyologist, I always have been impressed with the accuracy that you get in your fishes. So I was wondering, did you take any ichthyology course?
No.
Can differentiate Brachiostegas, their rays and spines. You really are very precise when you are drawing these.
Fairly precise, but if you start looking at them, you could probably, you know, I don't do a lot of scientific illustration, but then when I'm asked to do stuff for some papers, so this is going to be in a paper, in a scientific paper, and darn it, they made me redraw it because I had the scale count off. You know, so, come on, man. It's like, no, they're going to have like a 100 scale row, not 60 like that troll. It's like, oh, okay, so I had to redraw it. So I don't have the patience for that. So I don't take direction well. So, but I try to do that. I do interact with scientists, and I did a whole mural of Amazonian fishes, and that turned into a big exhibit. And yes, I'd like to really make them accurate, and I'd love doing that. And I'm sure as scientific illustrators, you love just going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of, you know, trying to get the luminescence of, you know, the wing or the shape or that feather or that, you know, the insect eyes. Just you know, endless inspiration, you know. And hopefully, I mean, my belief is if I'm fascinated with it, if you can bring your audience along with you, you know, and if they could feel that fascination, you know, you imbue it with your own enthusiasm. And I can do this now. I used to be afraid to talk to people, you know, in front of, used to frighten me, but now I can just get up and talk. But you can share that enthusiasm. It's infectious, but I really do believe that I try to draw them and make them as engaging as I can, and that's what our jobs as artists is, to, you know, stop people in their tracks and make them look, oh, what is that?
Have you done any dissection? I mean, have you uncovered a skeleton and saw how it was constructed, or are you getting all your information to work from photographs and things?
I dissect fish by filleting them. and frying them. But actually, that's how you learn. Yeah, but I haven't dissected mammals, but I've dissected and eaten fish. No, but I've not done any, like Jay Maternus, he dissected animals, and that's how he's the, like you said, he's the true master for paleo stuff especially. But no, I haven't. And I'm squeamish. One last really good question. Or so.
Well, you mentioned like that netherworld between science and art, and I feel like that's where like a lot of young artists are stuck. Like I very much have a BFA, but I just have a fascination in science. I don't have all like that biological background, but I still render. Well, like how did you find navigating those waters, so to speak? Like I don't know. It's because you can't come to the scientific community because they won't check you. I mean, like sometimes they don't accept your background, and they're like you don't know the anatomy, everything behind it, versus like you don't want to be a gallery artist either with all these
I
conceptual.
think that with very few exceptions, I can't think of any. I think every interaction I've had with scientists, I'm genuinely curious about their work, and I find them always excited that someone is interested in portraying their work. I think they're just talking about all the scientists in the room, and not blowing smoke.
As long as you're willing to their direction, they're excited that you're interested in what they do. As long as you're willing to listen to what they have to say and not just do your own thing, because then you'll turn them off completely. They're very accepting people.
Yeah, I'm a little different than that because I usually do my own thing. But when I'm doing a paper for them, I've got to actually, yeah. But so I'm just being, because what I'm doing is just being inspired, and I'm just, actually even when I worked on these books with Kirk, it's usually parallel tracks that we're on. He was never, well actually there's a few times he said we really need this, but we were having adventures and doing things together, but in parallel, in tandem, I was just doing art and we were having these adventures, but there was really nobody directing. So it's hard to say, but there is this world, when I talk at art schools or whatever, too, when there's young people and your parents are totally worried that you're an artist, how are you ever going to make a living? And I just say, look around you, there's art everywhere. There's aesthetic choices that are made everywhere. You'll find a path because there's art everywhere. I don't need to list them all off, but they're all around you. But especially if you get a passion for science, as person to person, yeah, there really isn't a job out there that says fine artists apply here. That doesn't exist. So you got to find your own path, but it can be an exciting one. So don't worry, it'll be all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for having me, you guys.